Hey guys, I hope you're all doing really well. I'm Allure Cosplay, and today we break down my spooky Flicker Halloween extravaganza Magic the Gathering deck. Let's go.
Let's talk about my commander. This is Aminato the Fate Shifter. She is pretty quick to cast because she only costs 3. Her first ability is draw a card, put a card from your hand on top of your library, so basically it lets you play with an extra card. The second ability, exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. This is basically a Flicker commander, which is the premise of this deck. The last ability just lets you flip everybody's board. Everybody hates that ability, so I've only ever done it 3 times when somebody really peeves me off. There are only 4 enchantments in this deck. Teleportation Circle lets me flicker something at the beginning of my end step once each turn. Propaganda and Ghostly Prison, you have to pay 2 to attack me for each creature. This is basically my protection from token decks because I face a lot of them. And Revel in Riches is a win condition that also gives you some treasure tokens. This deck has 34 beautiful lands. As you can see, I tried to match the aesthetic. There's obviously some dual lands and some fetch lands as well. There are only 5 sorceries in this deck. I'm gonna start with the best and my favorite one, Rise of the Dark Realms. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Love it. I love it right after Plague Wind, which destroys all creatures you don't control. Approach of the Second Sun, this is a win condition. This is a take an extra turn sorcery, and this is a exile a problematic creature or flicker your own creature kind of card. And here are the instants in this deck. A lot of them have the flicker mechanic, all of these to be precise. I have Congregate. Sometimes when you become the villain of the game, you just need to gain some extra life. This is a counter spell, although I should get a better one because in later game people can pay 3 like no tomorrow. This is destroy target artifact or enchantment. Sometimes, there are problems. And yes, it's a Proxy Iconoclast. My other one is in a different deck and I don't want to keep swapping it, so there it is. And now let's go over all the artifacts. I have the usual mana rocks that every deck should have. A couple of card draw artifacts. Conjurer's Closet, basically the same as Teleportation Circle over there. Flicker something at the beginning of your end step. And my favorite, Panharmonicon. If an artifact or a creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This deck is all about unentered triggered abilities, so this is amazing because it makes them trigger twice. Starting with the least exciting creature, this is a fetch 2 basic lands if you sacrifice this creature. So most of my creatures have unenter abilities, like these 4. These 4 will return a target permanent to their owner's hand on enter. So if I manage to flicker them, meaning exile them and return them back to the battlefield, their unenter ability will trigger again, meaning I can use their ability again to my advantage. These 3 are also pretty cool. They either destroy or exile target permanent when they enter the battlefield, meaning if I manage to flicker them, I can keep destroying everybody else's battlefield. These 2 have a discard ability, which really helps if you know that somebody is holding some spice in their hand, but also if you're trying to control the board and make somebody discard as much as they can so they have nothing to play. These 5 mainly help with card draw. Some of them help with a little bit of life gain. If I have an empty hand, I can keep flickering one of those creatures and I can keep drawing cards. These are 2 fetch on enter demons. Basically, if I want to get anything out of my deck, if I have one of those on the board, I can keep flickering them and I can keep searching my deck for all the goodies that I have in there. These 6 are mainly shapeshifters, meaning they can turn into any creature on the board, and a few of them are take control over another creature kind of creatures. For example, Stunt Double has unenter copy ability, meaning when he enters he can be a copy of any creature on the board. But what if somebody plays a way better creature than the creature that I copied? I can simply flicker him, he will exile, come back into the board, and I can choose another target for him to copy. By the way, I love that it says any creature, it doesn't say target creature because it can become Progenitus. The next 6 creatures either trigger exile abilities or benefit from them. So these 3 trigger exile abilities, meaning they can flicker anything at the beginning of my end step. This one will create a 1/1 White Spirit creature token with flying every time I flicker something. These guys will get +1/+1 every time anything is flickered. And of course, this spooky deck wouldn't be anything without a Ghostly Council. There's actually a few other Ghostly Council cards, but they cost a lot more to cast, and this deck doesn't have any reduction of cost to cast stuff. I love this guy. He is basically my board wipe. He is my nuke. It also nukes me though, so you know, I don't like playing him. Sometimes he's just needed, meaning if you kill him, I can pay 1 and destroy all artifacts, all creatures, and all enchantments. Ghostly Council's on-enter ability is that when it comes to the battlefield, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. You can keep flickering him, which will definitely stack up in your favor. And the really cool thing about this card is that it flickers itself. At the beginning of your end step, it will exile, and then it will come back at the beginning of your next turn. And now let's go through the rest of the creatures. Sometimes when you keep flickering those creatures that keep drawing you cards, you just need to know maximum hand size. This is basically Ghostly Prison and Propaganda in a creature form. I do like to protect my board. This will basically get me 1 plains every time I flicker it, so if I don't have any lands, at least I'll have a bunch of plains. This is a bit of a control card. White and blue spells that I cast cost 1 less to cast, but spells that my opponents cast cost 1 more to cast. It has nothing to do with the whole flicker mechanic in the deck, but I love it. I love this card too. I love that he has flash, meaning I can use him as an instant. When he enters the battlefield, I basically flicker out or phase out of existence my whole board or whatever I choose to flicker. So if something is being targeted on my board, I can instantly bring him in. My whole board will disappear and come back at the beginning of my next turn, meaning all the on-enter abilities will again trigger. Massacre Worm. He is so spooky, he fits perfectly in my deck. When he enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until the end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, that player loses 2 life. This is amazing against token decks, especially if they're measly tokens, but also against bigger creatures, because if you can flicker this guy in the same turn about 3 to 4 times, that stacks up and it becomes, you know, -6, -8, -10, depending on how many times you can flicker him, and that kills most of the big creatures too. And last, but certainly not least, my pride and joy from this deck, Magister Sphinx himself. He's a little bit hefty to cast. However, when he enters the battlefield, target player's life total becomes 10. If you're playing with 4 people, all you have to do is flicker this bad boy twice and make everybody else's life total also be 10. If you manage to pull off this combo, you will rise in the ranks as the villain of the game. So be prepared, people will come after you. Panharmonicon is one of the best artifacts for this deck because it makes any ability that's on enter trigger twice. Meaning, for example, if you play the Magister Sphinx, you can make somebody's life total 10, but on enter, it will actually trigger an additional time so you can choose somebody else and also make their life total 10. As an addition to that, if you have your commander on the board, you can downtick them by 1. Again, flicker your Magister Sphinx, which will trigger twice, and choose 2 additional targets to also make their life total 10. At the beginning of your end step, your teleportation circle, if it's on the board, will trigger, meaning you can flicker him 1 more time, which means that ability will trigger 2 more times. See what I mean? This deck can become scary. And how can I make my beautiful creatures flicker more than once? For example, this guy will give -2/-2 to each creature under opponent's control. I can then use a very cheap instant to flicker him again. Now he will give -4/-4. I can cast my commander, -1 her, and flicker this guy again. Now it will be -6/-6 until the end of turn. If I have any of those 2, that will trigger an additional time. At the beginning of my end step, it will flicker this guy 1 more time. That will be -8/-8. I have a few creatures that also trigger a bunch of flickering, so that will mean -10, -12. You see what I mean? This deck can go crazy. You don't have lands, no problem. Just get this guy, he'll get you a bunch of planes every time you flicker him. So you can flicker him 3 or 4 times, you will get 3 or 4 lands. Flicker this guy, you can keep drawing cards to your heart's content. But why just draw cards when you can search for cards over and over and over again when you flicker these 2 guys? Or sometimes you just need to keep returning that really scary creature back to their owner's hand. Enough of that. Or keep destroying anything you want on anybody else's battlefield as long as you can muster another flicker. People that understand how this deck works though definitely know to snipe Panharmonicon on sight. A really cool combo is to keep drawing cards after you play Approach of the Second Sun. That way you will get Approach right back into your hand within a few turns.
Well, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe for more random nerdy content from me. Don't forget to click the notification button so you know when I upload next. Bye!